Welcome to the Kind Leader Podcast, where empathy meets action in the world of leadership. Your host, Gino DeGregory, engages with innovators and seasoned professionals from diverse sectors, all demonstrating the power of leading with kindness. And now, your host, Gino DeGregory.
Welcome to the Kind Leader Podcast. I'm your host, Gino DeGregory. Today we have another amazing guest with us, Charlie Bobbish. He's currently a corporate pilot and flight instructor, but has had a successful career as an entrepreneur and CEO in the government contracting world. I've known Charlie for over 2 years, and since day one, he has always been a kind leader and has helped people do the right things. And by that, we'll talk a little about his experience in the aviation world, I'm sure. The personality you bring, you're very kind, but also help and push people do the right things. What I mean by that is like you're helping people out, from that perspective. And we'll expand on that a little bit more. So hopefully that resonates.
Interested to hear your examples of that.
Yeah, for sure. So Charlie, welcome. So could you please share with our audience a bit about you and your experiences that has shaped your leadership style, please?
Sure. Thanks for having me. I'm flattered for the invitation. So a short bit about my background. I have a sort of a long, twisted path to getting to where I'm at today. You mentioned I'm a corporate pilot today, also a flight instructor, but I'm also still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up.
Nice.
The short of it is I have an IT background, and I realized while I loved coding and I loved software engineering early on in my career, I wasn't very good at it. So that self-awareness and also realizing that there's more money in management drove me towards management earlier in my career than I probably thought I was going to do. And I had an opportunity to start a business in 2005, which I did. And I was very, very fortunate and met some amazing people along the way. And I was able to sell it in 2014. And then I sort of became adrift. What am I going to be now? I'm not going to an office anymore. So a bunch of things happened. I started a consulting business, which is still going on today, trying to help people sell businesses. I rode my bike for 2 years, just trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And then this thing called COVID happened, which you may have heard of. Mm-hmm. And that created an interesting opportunity, which was I had a lot of time on my hands to study. And I started studying to get myself back into aviation. I've been a pilot for, it's my 28th year as a pilot. Wow. And when that happened, I realized I loved flying. I had a passion that I didn't know was there. I mean, obviously I had been flying for a long time, and I had owned an airplane for a long time. However, I didn't realize how deep that passion was, and I fell in love. Mm-hmm. And it sounds really hokey, but I just absolutely dove right into it. So became a flight instructor. I taught flying full-time for about a year and a half. And along the way, my network expanded, and a couple of opportunities came up for me to be able to fly corporate. And so now, as my wife refers to it, I'm the busiest retired guy she knows because I basically have about 4 jobs. Yeah, and I'm having fun. I'm advising people on how to sell businesses. I sit on some boards, and I'm flying some amazing airplanes, and I'm still occasionally teaching and still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. And that's I don't know amazing. What I'll get there.
Well, congratulations on all your success. I mean, it's amazing to being able, as an entrepreneur, the experience if you had, now you're helping others, not only in the business side, but also on the pilot side as a flight instructor, right? So congratulations.
Thank you.
And what a career. I mean, and I definitely, after getting to know you a little bit more, and I'll expand a little, before I ask my normal question about what does kind leader mean to you, I want to expand on what I meant by when I said you help people do the right things. And I think it encompasses several things. Obviously the easy one is in the flying, right? Mm-hmm. As a flight instructor, you're helping people navigate and learn the world of aviation, right? And you have to teach them the right things to do, or else they wouldn't be successful. Mm-hmm. They wouldn't be telling stories in the future. And on the business side, right, as you said, you're helping others with, on the business side, you sit on several boards, you sit on, or you help your consulting business with navigating the business side of things on what to do and the right things. And I'll say this, hopefully this comes out the right way, is you don't sugarcoat things, right? And it's like, people think, kind leadership is we talked about this in several, it's like, it's not only about being nice, but also you have to ask the tough questions and you have to push people the right way. And that's what I mean by that, right?
I will share with you that I shared with my parents that you had invited me to do this, and I believe they're still laughing, honestly.
That's funny. Well, good. We're good. Well, anyway, so I just wanted to share the tidbit as it relates to what I see, my perspective,
Cool.
and what I've been able to experience with your professional relationship we have as well as our friendship. So thank you. So coming back to the question is, what does kind leader mean to you?
I don't think you have to have a title of boss or manager or CEO or, division director or anything like that to be a kind leader. We have an opportunity to be kind leaders every day, whether we're in line in the supermarket or we're teaching or as a parent or something like that. There's lots and lots of opportunities to be kind, and how we can conduct ourselves can set an example for other people. And that can be an example of kind leadership. We can sit there like a bump in a log and do nothing, or we can take an opportunity to do it. So that's my words. I'm going to share somebody else's words because you asked for my words, but just kind of frames my argument. There's a quote that I love. It was my uncle read it at one of my grandfather's funerals, and it's from George Washington Carver, which says, "Resolve to be tender with the young, compassionate with the aged, sympathetic with the striving, and tolerant of the weak and the wrong. Someday in life, you've been all of these." And it's true. We have one shot to do this, right? So why not do it right and be nice while you're doing it? Because, at any point, we may be trying to learn something, or we may be trying to come up in our careers. And if we can, put a hand out and help somebody else who's been in our shoes, why not do it? It's an opportunity to do it. Sure, we're all competing for things. We're competing for jobs, and we have colleagues who are doing the same thing. But if it doesn't hurt me to give you a piece of advice, why not do it? Because you might return in kind, or maybe you don't, but it's not where we're doing this.
Yeah, the expectation is never like, I'm going to be nice, I'm expecting you to be nice. It should always be, like you said, is I have the influence, not because of the title, right? I can do the right things, and I am going to do the right things, and not expect things for people to give back just because I'm doing it, right? And that's the biggest definition, because I think a lot of the times is, if I'm doing something nice, people are expecting, okay, why aren't you nice? But it's like, it could be so many things, right? You don't know what's going on in people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
And
Exactly.
that is the number one thing that I continue to navigate and learn, that the expectation of people is sometimes a little bit too high up there, and it gives the people the kind of the negative connotation, or starts like, why is he not? I was nice to him, why, or her. Why wasn't he nice to me, right? Or so it doesn't matter.
Right.
You be who you are. You be who you genuinely need to be or want to be, and the rest is just will happen.
Yeah, good things will come for sure.
Exactly. Well, talking about the kind of the mindset that I always like to talk about in the episode is like, one of the things that I like to ask is the growth mindset versus scarcity mindset. What are your thoughts on that?
It's interesting. We talked about sharing, and the idea that all boats rise with the tide, right? If we're all doing well, then all good things will happen, right? If I can reach out and help you out with something. When I started my business, I had a network, and I have a much, much bigger network today. If I had today's network back then, it still wasn't big enough, right? I think I needed more people. Right. And so I'm very fortunate that some people reach out to me occasionally, once a month or so. Folks are asking for advice. Hey, can I take you to lunch and pick your brain on something? Other than getting a lunch, I have no expectation of anything, but generally they're asking for something, and I can share that. And I have a very, very large network, and I'm able to turn around and hand that back to people. So if somebody's asking me for advice on something, or, can you connect me with somebody, it doesn't cost me anything to do that, right? So that's a growth mindset in my mind, right? So I have something. It's not a resource that it might be scarce to somebody else, but it's a resource that to me is easy to use. And, I'm able to turn that out, If we don't continue to grow, we will go away. Jeff Bezos had a quote on a call years ago. He said, "Our business we will get beat and go out of business someday." Right. And there was a gasp. Right. But he's right. If the company doesn't evolve and change, somebody will come along and build something better. So why not help each other out while we're doing it? Yeah,
that's so true. I mean, that resonates in everything that you do. That quote too, right? Somebody will come and will take our jobs, or will take our business, or will take our whatever. So you always have to constantly be learning. And having that growth mindset is what's going to help you navigate through a lot of stuff, right? And then going into the different industries essentially that you've experienced, I'd love to pick your brain and pull a thread on that, especially with the mindset and that kind leadership. I guess the question I'm trying to ask is, what has your experience been in those different industries as it relates to the leadership styles, right? What have you seen work? Is it the same? I mean, being kind is going to be kind, right? Or a kind leader is going to be the same thing. But just curious on what is a consistency, or what I'm trying to ask?
Yeah, I think leaders who listen tend to be a little bit more successful in being kind. They're not necessarily putting their ego forward. They're more interested in doing what is right versus focusing on who's right. And I can use an aviation example in that in the cockpit, if we're disagreeing with each other, but we're going towards the right goal. If I've been kind to you beforehand, you're more likely to speak up and do it in a respectful way. And there's safety issues involved, right? If for some reason we disagree, but we're focused on doing the right thing, we can do it respectfully. We will be able to complete the mission, and the same thing in business, that the boss isn't always right, and there are kind ways to be able to speak up. And if the boss listens, that will embody the right culture for growth.
Gotcha.
I hope I answered your question.
You did. And I think if we continue with that path is the fear, right? Mm-hmm. Like what you describe is, if you are in a cockpit, let's go back to the story, and that individual is let's say the co-pilot or the first in command or whatever, right? First officer, I'm sorry. They're fearful of saying the wrong things to make the captain upset. You're not going to get the same level of safetiness, number one, right?
Correct.
The purpose of that other person is to back check you and track everything you're doing. So there's two eyes, just continuing to focus on the right things for number one, safety. Number two, just redundancy, right? And then just making sure that you are collaborating together. So the fear of, if you have an ego-led captain or a boss or whatever, it's going to, if you have that fear instilled, it's not going to allow people to really be who they want to be or they need to be to help the business move forward.
That's completely true. And unfortunately, lives have been lost because of people not willing to speak up, or a captain whose ego would not allow them to listen. Mm-hmm. The Tenerife example, for example, with KLM and Pan Am, hundreds of probably the worst aviation disaster in history. And so a lesson that we can take from that is, if I have a co-pilot, for example, right now, who's just really wants to tell me something before the flight, it's my job to know everything. Right. However, I may not know everything. I need to listen, and I need to make sure that he knows he's heard. He's a member of that team, and what he or she is telling me is valuable, even if I already know it. And so how I conduct myself and how I respond to that might impact how he or she responds in the cockpit later. If I totally blow them off, yeah, I knew that, I already saw that, I know, then they may not be willing to speak up if something happens, and that's not good. That's not good for our safety, not good for the safety of the passengers who are paying for us to do that. But conversely, if I am professional, and I hope that I am, and I listen, one, I might learn something, right? Because they're telling me for a reason. They think I need to know it. But two, I'm also showing them kindness as a leader, that they are part of the team. They're seen, they're heard, they're included. And I think that's part of kind leadership, is make sure your team knows they're important, and they are.
Yeah.
Even if what they have to say isn't, but you got to listen.
You definitely have to listen. And then, then you incorporate, as part of the leadership component, is accountability.
Yes.
Right? On the roles, right? Yes, they will be heard. Yes, you'll have a good connection and collaboration between that. But what is the accountability? What are you accountable for? Okay, you're accountable for the radio, so you're accountable for the checklist, right? And I'm going to be accountable for flying, right? This leg or that leg or whatever. And now we know our roles. Mm-hmm. Same thing in the business side, right? So when you're leading and you build that trust, an environment where there's no fear and people can communicate and collaborate, then you're like, okay, here's your accountability. Here are your goals. Here's the destination that we have to go. Here are the things that you need to do. I'm going to give you every resources that you need to be successful. But at the same time, things change. Mm-hmm. Weather comes in unsuspectedly. So weather on the business side could be, something didn't go our way. How do we adjust? Okay, we turn 10 degrees to the left and we adjust and adapt and then try to execute a different plan, right?
I love the analogy.
Right. And that's how I see it. I mean, I definitely appreciate the aviation kind of term experience that I've had and how I see, it's all about safety in the aviation world. On the business side, it's all about making sure that we have the right quality of service, taking care of our people, and making sure we have the right value that we're bringing to our customers, right? Safety may not be at the top of the thing, but it's one of the things that allows our folks to be accountable for the things that they need to do.
Right. And everybody on the team matters. They need to be heard. They need to feel like they are included and that they're part of the team and know what their role is, that there's visibility. One of the places that I do contract flying, we have a kid who cleans the aircraft, and he's so good. And this is his world. He lives in that world. He's introverted. And one day I introduced myself. I hadn't met him, and he sort of didn't want to talk to me. So I said, hey, can you show me a little bit about what you do so that when I turn the airplane back in, if there's anything I can do to make your job a little easier, I'll do it. And he sort of opened up to me a little bit. And by the end of the conversation, he had showed me tip to tail the whole airplane. But I was doing a couple things. One, I generally wanted to get to know the young man. He's a nice guy. Two, I wanted to understand, can I help him? But three, I wanted him to be included because he didn't see himself as a member of the team. He cleaned the airplanes. It's not a glamorous job. However, he said to me, and I thought this was really cool, hey, none of the pilots have ever talked to me before. So I encouraged the other pilots to talk to him, and you can see a change in him. He's lit up, he's happy, he's asking us questions, he's engaged. And that cost me nothing but 20 minutes of my day, and I didn't realize the impact I was going to have on him, but I'm happy I took the chance.
What an amazing story, Charlie. And that's exactly why you're here, right? That is a perfect story on what being a kind leader in making an impact in people's lives right there. Because you said you didn't have to talk to this individual. He's just doing his job, minding his own business. But you saw something. It's like, okay, how can I make his life better or understand what he's doing so we can collaborate and work together, right? For the same mission of keeping the plane safe, clean, and all that stuff, right? For the quality for the customers, essentially, right? And now you've changed that mindset to be like, oh, I can talk to the pilots. I am at this similar level where I'm seen as an individual, contributing individual, no matter where you are. And that's how I bring back to the business. You got to see everybody as a contributor into the company because you never know what perspective or ideas or things that they can contribute on the end of the day, all the way from an intern to the highest level, right? It's like everybody has a voice.
It's true. Absolutely true. I could not agree more.
And what you just did, like I said, is it gave them that voice. To be in exchange from, I'm not saying he's going to not be an introvert anymore. He's going to continue to be an introvert, but you change the perspective. I'm like, you know what? If I ask a question, if I can contribute this, now I'll be heard.
I like the way you put that, giving them a voice. Yes. I'll be stealing that.
There you go. You give them really, people need a voice, right? Especially those individuals who don't believe in themselves or the individuals that have those limiting beliefs, right?
Or a scarcity mindset.
A scarcity mindset, exactly, where they're thinking, I'm not good enough. I'm just cleaning the plane. I'm not as good as those pilots who have years of experience, But at the end of the day, we're all humans, right? They're contributing, right? So maybe they're seeing something that you may have missed so that your next flight, you can be better, right? So now he has a voice and now he feels empowered and the impact that you not only, I feel like, right? And we'll see where that goes, that you not only impacted his perspective and his voice in this scenario, but also maybe carrying that into life.
I hope so. It had a bigger impact than I expected, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So thank you for that. That's amazing. Other questions from an adversity, because that's a great example of your leadership in action there. But from an adversity perspective, right, in all different industry, what have you seen or experienced that you've been able to really lead with, with empathy or kindness to change that adversity into a positive side?
I have to think about that from an example standpoint, but every business is going to go through a crisis or going to deal with something very difficult, or, in the business you're in and I was in, you might have a difficult proposal coming up or something like that. You got to talk to your team. You got to let them know, look, I know this is going to suck. This is going to hurt. It's going to take a long time. We're going to do this together and we're going to be okay, right? I'm here. You're here. I know your contribution. In cases maybe you have an opportunity, maybe speak to their family, and tell them, hey, I appreciate their contribution. I know this is going to be difficult. I need them here on weekends. Here's where it's going, and try to communicate that and just be clear up front, and make sure that they're heard as well. So that, as you said, they have a voice, and we'll get through it together for sure. There's always, everything is not always going to be roses. There'll always be issues for sure.
For sure. So so some of those challenges, it can be averted through clear communication, right? And I don't know if you're familiar with Simon Sinek. He talks is leading with why, right? It's a good book that he has out there. The why and the purpose is so powerful. And you're starting to describe that by saying, okay, we have this big proposal, but now you're talking to them and you're sharing that vision and that purpose. This is what's going to happen. It's going to give us, an opportunity to X, Y, and Z and make an impact in X, Y, and Z, or whatever it is that thing you're doing, right? But it's so much more powerful than just, hey, just write your proposal. It's your job.
Right. Yeah. I need you here. You're going to do it.
Yeah. Right.
And you're going to like it.
Exactly. Right. You're getting paid and all that stuff, but it's not about that, right? It's not about it because they can get paid anywhere.
That's true.
They can get paid anywhere, right? So it's like, where do you want to not only get paid, but also enjoy and be connected to the purpose, right? And I've said the purpose here in the company is to attract and create kind leaders that are impacting our customers, partners, and communities. That's our why that I always talk to people out there, right? Wherever I talk to, and I share that because it's important. Why are we here? Yes, we're an IT company, but the people is what matters. The people is what's important, right? And in navigating it, is it perfect? No, of course not, right? There's always going to be a journey in the things that we're learning, right? At the end of the day. But I like your example there, or your definition of from adversity. So thank you for that.
I'm also a fan of getting ahead of things. If you see something isn't going to work out, just cut ties and move on. Yeah, I think that's also an example of how to be kind to your team and kind to your partners, that or letting somebody know, look, you're about to head down this road. Here's what I see will happen if you do that. Yeah. I think that's an example of being kind rather than sort of waiting and hoping that they don't screw up.
Yeah.
And maybe they still will, or maybe you're wrong, but at least letting them know is a way of saying, hey, here's based on my experience, here's what I'm seeing.
Exactly. No, it's amazing. Something that as you were talking popped up in my head. And the reason I want to bring it up is I think it's an example of, a scenario that you and I experienced. I don't know if you recall, about a year and a half or so, we were flying into St. Louis, and we were like 5 miles or less than, into, and then we're trying to gears down, and the gears did not go down.
I do recall.
And the reason I want to share that is not to scare people. So please fly with me in the future, whoever's listening out there, is the communication, right, between you and I, and how we handled that situation, because we also had a passenger behind us.
That's right.
Right? We had somebody who didn't freak out either, because we kept it very cool. We were 2 miles, we're coming fast, and we're like trying to figure out. You pulled out the checklist, and the main thing for us is Aviate, right? We had to make sure we're flying the plane. So after we're coming in, you looked at the checklist, we went through it, and the first thing that was there is like, check for the electrical, the
circuit breaker.
The circuit breaker, thank you. And that's the first thing. And it was as simple as that, right? That could have gone in so many different ways, but it was as simple as, okay, be aware of what's happening. Don't freak out. Mm-hmm. And I pushed the button and then tried it again. Landing gears went down. We landed, no problem, right? And the reason I'm bringing it up is because it's an adversity that we faced, that there was a trust between us and in communication back and forth. I didn't say, it started screaming, you're playing, Charlie, because you have more years of experience for me, save us from this thing.
And I hope I didn't try to take over either.
No, you did. And you were like, okay, we have the situation, how we address it. We looked at the checklist. We had enough, we were like at 2,000 feet or 1,500. So there was enough room to do it. Oh, and by the way, to add more to the stress, we were running low on fuel too.
That's right. We were at min fuel.
Yeah. So everything was legal for sure. Mm-hmm. But as we're coming down, everything worked out. And I think I go back to the trust relationship and communication that we've had. And at that point, I wasn't, I am the pilot in command and you got to do what I tell you to do. It's more like, okay. And you weren't like, let me take over and let me lead it. We were collaborating and co-creating in order to keep us safe. Does that make sense? I'm just trying to loop it into as it relates to what we've been talking about.
No, it's key. In the cockpit, that kind of communication, respect, and trust is key, because could just sit there and somebody could lock up and not do anything, or they could say, no, I'm in charge, and go do something wrong.
Yeah.
And in those situations, you have to focus on what is right, not who's right.
Exactly.
And communicate. Before every takeoff in the corporate world, we brief. This is what's going to happen, even though we've done it 100 times.
Right.
And the last thing that I say in the briefing is, I will fly the airplane. You have radios and checklists, but we will have dual concurrence on anything that we do. All right, not only letting a co-pilot know, again, you have a voice, but also we're not going to go flipping switches. I call it the angry octopus, grabbing things,
right?
And grabbing the wrong thing. We're going to do this calmly and professionally, because we're professional pilots, and that's what we'll do. And I think, a brand new private pilot can take something from that example.
Right. Absolutely. And bringing it back to the business side, that has the same impact. Like, let's say you're dealing with a project and the project goes south, like really south. It's easy to say, point fingers, you did this and you did that. Imagine you're coming down with no gears down. You can't be saying, hey, Charlie, it was your fault, right?
Yeah.
It's like, what the heck did you do, right?
Right.
And that's the mindset, right? That's what I really wanted to bring home here, that it's really important to lead with kindness have that empathy, which will build the trust and relationship with communication to be able to solve anything, any problem for that matter, right? So in the business world, if something goes south, now instead of pointing that finger, it's more like, okay, what's going on? How can we stop that situation from happening again? Or how can we, what kind of resources you need to be, let me pull out the checklist if I have one, on the business side, and make sure that we can survive and land that plane safely on the business side.
Right. I like that. Mm-hmm.
So I've learned so much from aviation. I see, and I relate a lot to, and I bring it a lot into the business world because it relates tremendously, right? You can really put some correlation into doing the right things and executing flawlessly.
That's true.
So, well, good. I just wanted to get that kind of story out there.
That was our first trip together, too.
I think it was.
It sort of set the stage.
And it wasn't the last one, right?
No, it was not. It was the beginning of a lot of very, very fun and enjoyable adventures with you. I always enjoyed flying with you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Same here. Same here. So one question as we're starting our descent here, what does success as a leader mean to you?
Well, first we run our descent checklist before we do anything else. As a leader, I'm a nerd. I'm always trying to do something new and learn something new and dive into something until it doesn't work out. So it's experiences, it's trying things, it's travel, it's talking to people, it's learning. That sounds very cliche, but that's what works for me. I can't just sit on my hands. I have to have experiences.
Right.
And to me, that's what defines success, whether you're a leader, individual or not. But that makes me happy. And if it makes me happy, then I'm successful.
That's awesome. And I think that's so true. I mean, think about it, get a little deep here. It's like you come to this world to experience this world, not to just do things. It's to experience them, right? And make sure that you, hopefully by the time you transition or whatever, you've made the impact that you really wanted to make with others. So that's how I see it. So thank you for sharing that. So now, if you could have coffee with anyone alive or from the past, who would it be and why?
I'm a nerd about history. This is a fun one for me. And I realized it was going to be stressful because I came up with a list of about 20 people.
Oh, wow.
And I started with folks like Ronald Reagan, Otto Frank, Herb Brooks, Alan Turing. And I realized that, all of those would be fascinating, but they've been studied. So their lives and their leadership styles, things like that have been studied. So then I went back to a nerdier part of my life, which is my father descends from Carpathian, which is essentially for this conversation is Ukrainian, and my wife is Croatian. So I'm kind of an Eastern European history nerd.
Okay.
Like it's just one of those things I really like studying. So I chose Mikhail Gorbachev as somebody I'd like to have coffee with. This is a guy who in his mid-50s grew up in a system where kind leadership was not only opposed, it was punished.
Wow.
So here's a guy who I think history in the West has judged as kind, but he threw his political career away to essentially do the right thing. He was a student of history. He and his wife, Reza, who he absolutely adored, and he was a family man, did a lot of travel. And travel, as Mark Twain said, is fatal to prejudice. So you travel, you get to see other people's perspective. Yeah. And he realized that the Soviet Union would have to come to an end. And in the history of Russia, going back even before the czars, anytime that their economy stagnated, they had a war or a coup and people died. And he didn't want that. Yeah. And he saw that there was an opportunity for it to basically have a soft landing. And he threw his political career away to do what was essentially the right thing. Not a perfect man by any means. He did some things that weren't so great. But I think, he had a Nobel Peace Prize, and I think the West has judged him as arguably, somebody who would be, potentially a kind leader. So that's the guy that I chose.
That's beautiful. I did not know that. That's awesome.
As I said, I'm an absolute nerd about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I say, "Vachochu piety za vami kavi, pani Gorbachev," which is Ukrainian for "I want to have coffee with you, Mr. Gorbachev."
Oh, wow. Okay, nice. Well, thank you for sharing. That's a great story for sure. I did not know that about him, and that's awesome. That's awesome. And I think things turn out. I think he changed things back when he was there. So
I hope so. Like I said, I stressed about that one because there's hundreds of people I'd love to have coffee with because I'm just a history nerd.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So where can listeners, if they want to reach out to you, ask you questions, or where can they find you? LinkedIn or anywhere else?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, and I'm on Twitter, but I don't use it that often. I teach at Aero Lead Flights Training in Leesburg. I'm on the website there. I'm one of the assistant chief of flight instructors, and my contact information is there. But I'm out there on the web. I'm just like you. I'm a Gen X guy and use all those tools, right?
Awesome. I appreciate that. Any final thoughts here for the audience?
I love what you're doing. Not only the podcast, but having watched you as a leader and watched you, build your business over the last couple of years that we've known each other. You're doing this the right way. You're not just putting people in seats, and that's something that a lot of people in the Beltway can be doing, right? It's not. I don't want to say this without being condescending. It's not hard to run a government services business. It's hard to do it right. And to do it in a way that you can impact people's lives, make some money, impact the mission of national security, and have some fun doing it. You're doing it, and that's rare. So it's really cool. I definitely tip my hat to you.
Oh, thank you very much, Charlie. I appreciate those kind words for sure. And definitely, it's one of those things that. It's not easy for sure, but it's something that just takes time, right? And it's really about caring, right? Like I said, it's leading with kindness, and it's different. And surprisingly enough, the more and more I'm doing this, the more and more people are like, "Oh yeah, this is great. Like I want to incorporate something like this in my business and how we do this, right?" So it's slowly kind of putting the word out there to help people out. So
you're being kind by setting an example and teaching. That's important.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Charlie, for joining us today. And I want to thank our audience for listening as well. Like always, please, send me a note or an email or anything if you want to see something else, other questions that are being asked or anything. If you have other folks that you want to be part of this, the guests, feel free to reach out as well. So with that, I'll leave you with be kind, bring value, rise together, everybody.
Love it.
Take care.